Well, welcome back, everybody, to Prison Break with Shirley and Shonda. We are here on this evening with a very special edition, special guest. Breaking down walls, mind, body, and spirit is what we love to do, and so this title was none like one that we have not done in the past, and so we are just very excited about this topic, about the things that we have been ushered into talking about because we know that it's needed. We know that people are sometimes stuck in a rut. They're stuck in certain situations where they're not quite sure of where to go next. And so we are so ready to talk about this topic. Well, some of us are ready to talk about this topic. So without further ado, we're going to bring on our special guest, Mr. Ronnie Russell, and we are going to be talking about this topic. A peace is better than none. Women who won't let go. So thank you for being here, Mr. Russell.
Thank you for having me, myself. Appreciate you and Ms. Shonda for always standing in the gap and interceding for those who do not have intercession.
Awesome. Well, go ahead, Miss Shonda. Go ahead and bring us into our topic on tonight.
Well, I gotta say, Shirley, I want to change the topic title. I know that we selected this and we kind of selected this a while ago too, but I want to change it
Mhm.
because I think we say a piece is better than none. And then we said women who won't let go. But if we look at relationships just in general and what it is that people are willing to accept or willing to stand by, it's not just women who won't let go. Sometimes you have situations where those men are in those spaces where they're getting a good deal, right? Where they're living with a woman and the woman is footing the bill and they're not really being required or asked much of, and they decided to stay, even though the relationship is not what they want, as evidenced by them stepping outside of that relationship. So it's not just women who get into these positions where they won't let go and they feel like what they have is better than going out there and finding something different, because why start over sometimes. So I think I want to change it to a piece is better than none, and then say
Mhm.
people who won't let go, and then we'll leave
Okay.
it at that, because I don't want it to always put it on women. It's not just women who do that, is it? It's not, right, Mr. Russell? It's men that do it too.
Yes, that is a definite solid answer of yes.
Okay, so I'm sure he's gonna give us some nuggets as we get down deep into this subject. So let's
Okay.
begin. You know how I like to do, Shirley. I like to get backstory. So how did we
Yeah.
get on this topic? I think when Pastor Gilchrist came to visit with us, shout out to Pastor Gilchrist. We pray that you are doing well and that you are
Yeah.
recovering. And while we're praying that he's doing well and that he's recovering, all my teachers, y'all get yourselves together. I know y'all go back to work with these kids on Monday. God bless y'all.
Mhm.
Praying for y'all, because I don't know how y'all gonna make this virtual space work, but I know that it can be done. So prayers for you all as you're getting ready to go. Prayers for our kids who are not ready to go back yet, and prayers for our parents that got to pull dual duty. So just wanted to throw that out there. That's been on my heart lately. Um, but leading into this topic, a piece is better than none. I think Pastor Gilchrist was talking about maturity as far as relationships, and how we're seeing, as the tides begin to turn and things begin to change, that we're seeing a lot more of our young women who are in relationships with young men that are their age, but we're finding that sometimes either one or the both of them is not ready or mature enough for a committed relationship. And so what's happening is they're coming into these relationships, and like I said, one or the both of them are not mature enough. And so then there's some dramatic things that happen in the relationship. And sometimes it's something as small as one person not taking care of home or doing their part, or it can be as large as, they're being verbally abusive, or they're not engaging well, not communicating well with the other person. So we have these women who are in these relationships, and the young man is not taking care of home. Maybe he doesn't know what he's supposed to do. Maybe it wasn't put in him when he was younger, or maybe it wasn't something that he had demonstrated for him, or maybe he's just not ready to be into a full-fledged committed relationship, and he's in this relationship, and you're wondering and asking why the young lady won't just leave, or we're asking the young man, if she's not all that you want, why are you staying? And so coming to that question and asking that question of people, why are you staying in these relationships and holding on to a piece of this person, because that's all that you're getting from
Mhm.
that person, because they're not fully engaged in what's going on with you. Why are you hanging on to a piece of this person when there is a whole billions of people on the whole planet that you could probably get connected with that may actually be who it is that you're looking for, may actually do some of the things that you want them to do. So when we came across that topic of conversation, it really stood out to us. I know me having a heart for young men and young women, also having some young adults in my home and trying to teach them how not to settle and how to make sure that they're carrying their weight and handling their part of their partnership that they're having. Right. So, with that being part of my heart, I definitely wanted to come onto our show on tonight, Shirley, and really just talk about it, just chat it up with people that I know, love, and trust, right? That I can really get honest conversation about how are we here and how do we encourage these young people, young men and young women, not to settle for less than in their relationships, and how to really know your worth enough to really make sure that you get connected with someone with who you're on the same path with, mentally and maturity wise.
That was good, Shauna. That was a mouthful. You
I was
said
about
so
to
much.
say, was it close enough to what what
I,
we had
I,
talked about
I
before?
think you might have done pretty well. I'll
Yeah.
give you a
Okay,
cookie after
awesome.
this.
No
So
cookies
yeah,
right now, but I'll take some fruit.
okay, okay. So you mentioned several things about why is a person hanging on to this other person. I'm first gonna let Mr. Russell go ahead and chime in, and then I'm gonna jump in.
Oh Lord, trying to throw me out there. Um,
Yep.
Always.
I think it can be looked at and viewed from several different aspects. Like if they were in a relationship previously that they never really fought for, that they never um, really put their all into. So then when they go into that next relationship, like for me, I'll speak for me. So in my first marriage, I never really fought for it like I know I probably could have. And because I did not fight for it, I'm like, okay, maybe there's something I need to look at for me personally that I can do better the next time. So going into that second relationship, I'm already having the mindset of, okay, whatever happens, I'm going to stick it out. And I think a lot of people carry that. I mean, those emotions carry over. Those thought processes and concepts carry over that oftentimes they allow themselves to be a victim from the beginning
Mm,
because they're trying to hold on to something that happened from before. And now they have anxiety issues and separation issues that they have yet to recover from. And now they're going into their next relationship with those same anxiety and separation issues. So I think a lot of it can come from that past relationships that get them to want to hold on to whatever that piece of that person is.
hmm.
Even if it's
That's good.
toxic, that's real good.
Hmm.
Yeah. So for me, I would say hanging on to a person, the lack of self-esteem. um, if you don't have that in the first place, or you were already broken from a previous relationship and then you get into another one, but you were beat down in your first relationship or second relationship, it doesn't matter. But you have that sense of lack of self-esteem, like maybe they put you down and so you didn't feel worthy of anything better. They told you, oh, you'll never get anybody else, or that's said to a lot of people a lot of times. And so, or no one's going to want you because you got kids and all of this kind of stuff. I've heard it. People have come to me and said those things. So if a person's self-esteem is not where it should be, or they don't have a sense of self-worth, when they get into a new relationship, you're right. Like Mr. Russell said, there is that tendency to hang on. Oh, at least I got somebody. So even if they do cheat, even if they are out lying or stealing or whatever it is that they're doing that you may not agree with, you'll hang on to that person. Some of it is fear.
Mm.
Mm,
Fear is a big one. I had a lot of that. Fear of not being believed. Um, Pride is another one because I had that too.
Right.
Not willing to tell somebody what was going on. Feeling like I could handle it on my own. There's also a sense of control. And then a lot of it is not being taught.
mm,
Everybody didn't come from a stable home. Everybody did not have a two-parent home where the marriage actually was working. like it was actually a good marriage. Everybody does not come from that background. And so we mirror things that we're taught, sometimes subconsciously, not realizing that we're doing it until we come to a certain point. So for me, I had gone to this conference. I don't remember what year it was, but it was a domestic violence conference. And I was sitting there and like light bulbs began to go off in my head, like, okay, you're not being abused this way, but some of those things that you are enduring, that you're putting up with, that didn't just start happening here. That's stuff that you witnessed in your childhood. And for you, it was normal. So you didn't see nothing wrong with it. But then when the light bulb went off, then it was like ding, ding, ding. Now I can put two and two together. But until we get exposed to better, we won't know any better.
So go ahead, Mr.
I
Russell.
think like when you said some people didn't come from a two-parent household where the marriages work. I mean, I did. You know, my parents are still married. I'm 44. My parents are still married. I'm the third oldest, and my parents are still married. So I came from that environment. But again, my experience was my experience.
Right.
Now, my exposure to the where I was at that time began the experience that I carried over even after that. So whether you come from a two-parent household or a single-parent household, it's what you're taught and what jewels that you carry and take with you that
Right.
will allow you to either be as strong as you can be, because you might not be strong, but as strong as you can be. Because being as strong as you can be is looking at things from all avenues and all perspectives. Say, okay, I'm not going to do this. Okay, yes, I need to do that. Or I'm not going there. Or I need to surround myself with other couples that have already experienced that may have already experienced those things. So I think it's a person's experience that will allow them to know where they're going to go and not go, where they're going, what they're going to do and not do. So whether you come from that two-parent household or not, is your experience that you carry around.
Yes.
So
I would say
I think
it's go ahead. Go ahead, Shonda.
no, go ahead, Shirley, and then I'll come back and put a dot. Go ahead.
Okay. So I think it is, yes, it is your experience. It might have been your parents' experience, but it was also your experience growing up. Because I had a two-parent household. Yeah, they were married, but I'm gonna leave that there. They were married for, throughout my upbringing and six children, but it was up to me to take the scales off my own eyes when I got to a certain point. And because I had experienced some other things outside of that, and I personally didn't want to be alone at that moment, I chose to hang on. First of all, I value marriage. And so doing what I need to do, doing my part was very important to me. So whether that other person was doing what they were supposed to be doing or not, my belief is I need to do what I'm supposed to do, because I'm the one that's going to have to stand before God and give an account for what I do, not anyone else. And so sometimes we have great intentions, but they can still be harmful to us if we do not seek the counsel of people who have, like you say, who have gone through some things, or who have an experience to where they're able to listen to you and give you godly counsel. And so people isolate themselves, and so when you isolate yourself, then you don't have that outlet when you isolate yourself. And there's many reasons why people do it, but go ahead, Shonda, put the dot on it.
I was just going to say that a lot of what we're talking about, and I could be wrong, I could be hearing it wrong. Y'all correct me. I know y'all will. But a lot of it is that age-old debate about whether it's nature or whether it's nurture that kind of determines how we're going to turn out. And so some of how we turn out is based on what it is that we've experienced by growing up in our parents' home. Some of how we turn out is based upon our personal experience, the risk or safeties that we have in place when we get to be a certain age. And then some of that is a product of circumstance, where I am at the moment and what it is that I choose based off of how I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing. But from everything it is that I'm hearing, I think that I hear that a lot of why we end up in these relationships where we're willing to accept less than what it is that we're worth is unresolved issues, whether it be
Absolutely.
our parents' unresolved issues that we've kind of taken on as part of our identity, or unresolved issues from our own personal lives where we haven't either realized or accepted our worth, or unresolved issues from our own personal past relationships where things didn't go like we wanted them to. So we're attempting to protect from experiencing that particular thing again. So it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like in each of these areas, it's a lot of unresolved issues it is that we're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing that's keeping us in this space of wanting to hold on to something that's not necessarily good for us, but it's kind of convenient in the moment.
Convenient in the moment. Yep.
And I think that could be the catapult into the what's next. Our Why should we settle for the convenience? Um, Oftentimes, like one of the things that I'm continually hearing now when they're saying um, a piece, is that piece worth your piece?
That's
Is that
good.
That's
piece
good.
going to be uh, is that piece just for the moment? Because if that piece is not worth your piece, then you're going to understand that you need to begin to sever yourself and look within yourself to try to figure out, okay, how much of me am I losing if I continue to stay in this particular
Mhm.
place or situation? Because I know me personally, I lost a lot of me when I had continued to stay in that relationship for so long, to where it, like, even now it's still kind of hard for me to adjust and adapt to certain things, and sometimes how some people say things, because I'm still adjusting, I'm still adapting. So I
Hmm.
have to acknowledge that that piece is not worth my piece, nor is that convenience convenient for me.
Oh, that's
That's
good.
real good. That's real good. That's like messages right there. You're gonna have
Well,
to bring a topic.
absolutely. I
Go ahead,
think
Shonda.
when I talk to these young kids, one of the things that I notice is that there is a lack of understanding on their part. So they've gotten, like, if they have two parent homes, or if they have parents that were in significant relationships when they were growing up, their attempt is to then copy or mimic. Like, they have this thing where they see something that sounds really good and then they want it for themselves. So they'll put a hashtag like goals or whatever behind it. And so they're looking at these people's relationships from an external portion, and they're like, oh, okay, this is what they're doing, so let me do the same things, not really understanding that the other side of that doing is there's a being that goes with that part, right? And so you may be doing the actions, but maybe you're not still being what it is that you're seeing, because each person has to translate what that means for themselves. So I'll give you an example. My kids look at my husband and I a lot, and they're like, oh yeah, I want that type of marriage when I get older. I want that type of relationship. That's goals. That's relationship goals. But my husband and I went through a lot to get to the point where we're at now. We're 16 years into our marriage, not 16 months. And the way it looks now looked a whole lot different than the way that it looked back then. And there were some things that, seeing us in the kitchen sharing orange juice from the same cup, you don't see the years where things weren't all that great. You don't see the times when it was orange juice being thrown across the kitchen instead of being shared across the kitchen. You don't get to see that stuff. You see a snapshot in time, and then you say, that's what
Mm-hmm.
I want. And so you begin to
Mm-hmm.
act in the way that you see for that moment, but that doesn't carry you far, because the first
Mm-hmm.
time that you get into an argument or a disagreement, or the first time that things don't happen that fit into that snapshot, now what do you do? And so I think sometimes there's just a lack of communicating that, and some of that is on our young people's part, because they don't want to hear from us, and then some of that is on our part because we don't necessarily bring it to them in a way that they can receive. Maybe it's not relevant, or maybe it's over their head, maybe it's not at the level where they're at that they can receive it, but there's a disconnect right there, I think, a lot of times too. So it's some unresolved issues there, and then some misunderstanding on the parts of people looking at. But that's how it is, though, right? When you window shop, things look great from
Mm-hmm.
the window,
Yeah.
but it's not until you
Mm-hmm.
go in and try it out that you realize, oh, you know what?
Don't
That's not for me. I don't need that.
fit.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
Right.
thought I wanted a water bed till I got in my parents' water bed the first time, and I was like, no, the
Yes.
devil is a lie.
Yeah.
This is too hot, and it makes too many moves for me to be trying to go to sleep on this. I don't want a water bed, but it looked great seeing my parents in it. But trying it out for myself, I realized it wasn't for me. So maybe that's some of too what we're seeing. What do you guys think?
It's representation, and I think you
Oh,
said it. Um, um, from from your mountaintop. Um, Looking at things from, like, all three of us, if you look at the analogy, all three of us are standing at a mountaintop and we're still looking down into the valley. Regardless of how you see it from your point of view and how I see it from my point of view and how Chandra sees it from her point of view, it is still a valley, but yet the representation of the valley is still coming from our perspective. Meaning, if, like, my parents is, I mean, their direct representation of a good marriage, because, like you said, they have gone through the,
Oh
somebody
no.
try to call me. They've gone
Okay.
through the this and the that, the things that got them to that point. Am I still frozen? Okay, I'm not frozen.
No, you talking. Go
no,
ahead.
you're good
They
to
have
go.
gone through a lot of those things, but again, there are more children and there are more young people now that do not have that representation, that do
Right.
not have or feel that another couple who have gone through things is something that I should seek, because
Mm,
that counsel from that couple could allow you to say, you know what, I never thought about it that way, because that person and that other couple can become the mediator to where they're going to look at it again from their perspective, and it's less of, it should be less of a confrontation between you and your spouse when you have that third person in there as or that couple in there that is mediating, because they've gone through that whole turmoil that you're going through. So I think representation is very important with it, whether it's another couple or whether it's someone that you two mutually understand that they're not going to be speaking on your behalf or your spouse or your other significant other's behalf, but just based on the foundation of what's true and what's right and what's just.
That's real good.
that's good.
Absolutely.
That's good. So then who determines how is it determined what's true and what's right and what's
Is it
just
you
as far as these couples are concerned? Can you hear me?
or is it me?
I don't
You're
know. Can
good.
you hear me, Shirley?
Yes, I can
Okay.
hear you.
Mr. Russell, can you hear me still? Okay,
Go
what
ahead.
about
Keep
now?
on talking.
I can't hear anything.
Okay, so my question was how do we determine, Shirley, then what's true and what's right and what's just as far as relationships go? Because my true and right and just then is not the same as everybody else's true and right and just. So, is there a basis? What's the basis? And
The
that's
basis,
a very leading question.
it is absolutely. Mr. Russell, are you still there? Go ahead and say something. Okay. So, for me, or for the believer, it is the Bible. It is the Word of God. That is what frames what is true and what is just. Everyone has their own beliefs. However, for me, that's the basis of what I go by. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm trying to
So
see if I
I
can get
think
back
that
on.
we did too. So then I think that if Mr. Russell were here, I think that he would agree with us that it's important to then enlist the mediation of a couple then who kind of believes in the same way that you do. So it would be difficult for my husband and I to get mentoring or to get guidance and wisdom from people who don't believe that what we believe, because then there would be no clarification, there would be no third party to mediate and say, hey, because this is what you believe, then what it is that you're trying to do and what it is that you think is outside of that realm. Hey, you kind of need to bring that back, because what you say that you believe is within these parameters, not all of these parameters.
Right.
So what I was saying, Mr. Russell, was that it's important. So if we're talking to our young people and we're telling them, hey, this is what we think that you should do in order to get past this point that you're at, and you need a third party, set up a couple who can come and to mediate your situation and be at that ear of wisdom, that voice of wisdom, then they would have to be of the same belief as you as far as relationships go. You don't want someone
Mhm.
speaking to your marriage or your relationship that is always trying to get people divorced. You want somebody who's going to be about your union, someone who has the best interest of your union at heart. Some people who believe the way that you do. A set of couple who you look at and you both, as husband and wife, say, "Hey, you know what? I kind of really like the way they carry their relationship. Maybe we together should look at enlisting them to be our guidance or our wisdom." Kind of coming on one accord with that as a couple.
Like it, like
That's
it, like
good.
it.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanna go back to this fear thing that we talked. That Shirley, you definitely got to give us some more insight here into why would fear keep you holding on to a piece versus your own piece.
Well, I can't do anything but speak from personal experience when I talk. And so, for me, during a time where I was wearing a whole lot of hats, I mean, I still wear a whole lot of hats. They just have a different name on them now. But wearing different hats and fearing the unknown, fearing, what's going to happen if I do, leave this relationship. What are people going to say? Um, how am I going to get to the next stage without this person? What are they going to do? Because, you know, um, carrying so many hats as a woman, being in the making the decision seat, which I should not have been. Um, that carries a whole lot of weight. And so um, when you don't know what's going to happen, and when you feel like it is under your control and not under the control of God, then there are certain things that you will continue to allow yourself to be in when you're not truthful with yourself, when you are
Mm,
um, yeah, a whole lot goes into that. And for me, I knew that there was a call on my life many years ago. But so many things were happening like that was not good, stuff that wasn't not good. And I'm like, well, what's going on? I don't understand. I'm not doing nothing wrong. I'm trying to do what's right. However, the bottom keeps falling out. What's going on? So I was at that stage of not wanting to make any changes because of fear of, like I said, fear of the unknown. What's going to happen now?
mhm,
What's going to happen to the kids? What else is going to,
mhm.
be? And so sometimes we make the wrong decisions trying to look out for our children, and but they see truth. They may not say anything, but they are affected by us hanging on when it's not
Yeah.
right.
Oh, definitely. My parents were together for a long time, and so they didn't divorce until I was almost a teenager. And by the time they finally did divorce, we had just been through so many things with them attempting to stay together that I was so grateful for the divorce. Like it was almost like a breath
Mhm.
of fresh air for my sister and I. Like, ooh, thank God. Okay, y'all finally got that, over with. I wish that they would have done it sooner because I feel like it would have saved my sister and I some heartache. It also would have taken us out of the equation as far as choosing sides, because when they begin to
Mhm.
split up, that began to be the conversation. Oh, well, they're old enough to choose. And
Mhm.
when you're a child and you're made to choose between your
That's a
parents,
burden.
it's
Mhm.
it is a burden because it's not
Mhm.
necessarily about choosing where to live. It feels like you're choosing one set of love over a different set of love. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Like, and if
Mhm.
and if I choose my mom and I don't choose my dad, does that mean that my dad is gonna think I don't love him? I don't care about him? Does that make me a bad child? Does it make me like not a good person because I'm choosing one? I don't want to hurt the other's feelings, and then end up choosing they as a child you end up choosing the parent who you think can't handle your rejection
Oh
versus
wow.
You know what I mean? So like
Hmm.
if my mom and my dad, if my mom is really really tough and she's really really hardcore and I feel like she doesn't really care and my dad is more sensitive, then as a child, I may not want to see my dad be disappointed in that way because he doesn't demonstrate himself as strong like my mom does. So I might choose to stay with my dad just because I don't want to see him hurt versus choosing to be with my mom because as a woman I know I need to be with another woman who could teach me about myself. I might choose my dad just so I don't hurt him in the process, not
Mm.
really looking at anything else. And that's a very large burden for a child to carry. So these things that come as part of breaking up your relationship or making changes in your relationship, I think that we get scared because we don't want to put any unnecessary hardship on other people, but we don't know
Mhm.
that we're actually creating more by hanging
Absolutely.
on. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we have any portions that go along with that, we are about at our halfway point. So we just want to
Already.
encourage you that if you have just tuned in to Prison Break with Shirley and Shonda, we are discussing if peace is better than none, a woman or a person who won't let go. So make sure that if you're just tuned in, that you go back to the beginning of this segment. You can find us on YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook. Prison Break with Shirley and Shonda. Feel free to drop those comments down below in the comment box. We want you to engage in this conversation because we want everybody to have a part in this discussion. All right, so we are back with a peace is better than none. And one comment that was said that was real key is that peace worth your peace by Mr. Ronnie Russell. And so, yeah, now we can continue on this conversation.
So what I was just saying before the break, if you guys would chime in on about the ripple effects of that hanging on to that person longer than you actually should, and how it damages other people that maybe you don't even think it damages. Maybe you think that by staying, you're saving those people from whatever that hurt is.
I'm gonna let you talk on that,
I,
Mr. Russell.
I think, I mean, I get that part, but I also hear some people say, um, well, my kid's not going to have a father if I leave this person, or I don't feel like starting over, so I'm going to stay with this person. Or they may even say, or even begin to create this as their false reality that I don't want to have to start over. Now, sometimes starting over can be a good thing
It's a real good thing.
because it allows you. That's kind of like as kids we say, do over. As an adult, you have plenty of time to do over. You have plenty of options for you to do over. So don't run
Mm-hmm.
away from what you feel doing over really is going to mean. But sometimes look at it from a gardener's perspective. When you're able to turn that topsoil over and plant new seeds, that means your harvest is going to be different because there's less weeds in the garden than what it was when you originally plant those seeds. You're able to
Mm-hmm.
actually begin to prune some of those flowers that you planted that you thought was really roses, but they really turned out to be dead plants because
Yeah.
the weeds have begun to suck the life and the nutrients out of those seeds. You thought that was going, oh, I'm planting apples. It's going to be an apple tree. Yeah, you thought those were apples. It looked like an apple seed, but it really wasn't because the nurturing wasn't there. Like Chandra said before, nurturing versus nature. The nature of planting a seed was a harvest, but the nurturing aspect was not there at all because you didn't water it, you didn't prune it, you didn't ensure that it had everything that it needed to have. So looking at starting over is always an option, only if you have tried all that you needed to do, and only
Mm-hmm.
if you have acknowledged that that piece is not worth you holding on to, and you have to be at peace with that decision that you make as well.
That's good.
Absolutely. Have to
That's
do that.
good. I
Yes.
am looking for the scripture. There is this scripture in the Bible, Mr. Russell, that you kind of triggered for me when you said that.
About permanent.
No, about seeds and God giving each of them their own body. So we
Oh yeah.
begin to, when we, if you look at the metaphor that you're using, we as people begin to plant different seeds in our lives just based off of whatever season that we're in. And a lot of times we think that it's going to yield a certain type of good fruit. But if you do not attend to that seed and water it the way that you should, it's going to take on a body, but it might not necessarily be the body that you intended for it. So
Right.
you might have intended for something good to come out of this situation. And what really comes out of it is a whole mess of things that you need to get rid of. But what it says in the scripture is that what you put into the ground is not the plant that will grow, but it's only a bare seed or whatever it is that you are planting. But God will give it the body that He wants for it to have. And a different kind of plant grows from each kind of different seed. And so we
What
have to be
scripture is that?
careful. That is in First Corinthians chapter 15. That is verses 37 and 38.
Yes, ma'am. So you said we have to be careful.
Oh yeah, you got to be careful
Yeah.
what you plant in the garden of your
Mhm.
life, because a lot of times we plant things that are not going to grow to a full fruition. We will plant a seed that is only half there. And then when it begins to get watered and it begins to come full, you realize that that is not exactly what it was that you were intending to have planted in the garden of your life. Maybe it's a person, or maybe it's an attitude or behavior. Maybe it's a situation that you've been allowing to grow in your life that really should have been plucked up a long time ago, but
Right.
you
Mhm.
continue to give it the nurturing that it needed to grow for whatever reason, and then when it fully matured, it wasn't what you wanted it to be.
You're like, whoa, what's going on? I mean, I thought I was
Right.
gonna have an orchard of apples. Like, no, that's an orange grove. That's not apples.
That is not an apple, right?
Right.
And it's not necessarily that the fruit is bad. It just wasn't expected and it wasn't what you intended.
Mhm.
And so
Yes.
then it becomes useless for you because it wasn't what you wanted. It wasn't what it was that you thought that you needed. Sometimes those oranges can turn out okay, but it wasn't the apple tree that you initially desired.
Right.
That's good. That's good. And it does take that pruning. It takes getting rid of the dead stuff so more fruit can be accumulated. And then your harvest is greater than what you could ever imagine if you take care of the seed in the first place. If you take care of the foundation of it, it can grow into what it is supposed to be. So yeah, that's real good. And so not allowing ourselves um to link up with pieces. If you're a piece, you need to make sure that you get yourself whole first, that you get whole first and link up with another whole and not pieces, because pieces do not come together and make a whole. They're just a bunch of pieces.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's really good. God's math is kind of different than
Yeah,
ours
real
when it
different.
comes to. Oh yeah, because we'll think that a
Mhm.
half and a half make a whole, but really a half and a half just make a bunch of halves. There's no completeness to that, right? So, but then you have one whole and one whole that come together that make another whole, and it's like, what? How did that happen? How do you get there? But
Mhm.
it's not our math, it's God's math and the way that that works. So when we talking about a piece is what is it? A piece is better than none.
A piece
A
is
piece
better
of
than
that
none.
person. So you might just be getting the mental part of that person, somebody that can talk to you,
Mhm.
that can stimulate conversation, but they have nothing physical to offer you and there's no future in it. All you're doing is doing a bunch of talking. Or then you might have
Mhm.
somebody that's willing to give you a piece of their body, but nothing else. And so then things are good with you physically, but nothing else is being stimulated and there's no growth or no future in where it is that you're going. Or the piece of the person that they may be offering is their finances or their provision. And so then all of those things are taken care of, but you're miserable inside of the provision. So there's no
Yeah.
future in that either. So all of
Mhm.
these pieces together make up the whole of a person. And so if I'm only
Mhm.
getting a third of you or a quarter of you, I'm missing out on more that you have to offer. Either you're not willing to give it at this particular moment, or you don't think it's worth giving at this particular moment.
Right.
And I think that probably a lot of that goes back to fear as well. A lot of things can be rooted and
Sure.
grounded in fear. Hmm. You got something, Mr. Russell?
Um, I think what happens is when a man and a woman begin to communicate and they feel that they're going down this path of a relationship, they're coming with their peace into the relationship. And I think when I can only speak from a man perspective. When you're coming into the relationship, you have to bring uh, your piece into it. Not your portion. That's a piece,
Mm.
but bring your piece into it, because you never know if that woman has been hurt in the past. You never know if that woman has been looked down upon, or talked bad to, or no one before you had the ability to allow her to think different, or even to absorb some of the way that she thinks, and gives it back to her and say, you know what, you smart, that makes sense. She might not have been used to that. So now when you're bringing
Exactly.
your piece, again, not portion is piece, but when you're bringing your piece to it, then that's going to bring a different type of peace in the relationship, because now she's opening up a lot more. She's less emotional, but
Mm.
she is more emotions into it, because she feels different. She's laughing different. She's smiling different. She's cooking different. She's dressing different, and she is a whole new different person, because you brought a level of peace to her that someone either tore down, or a piece to her that she's not used to. So again, I
Mm.
think, um, again, bringing where the peace came from. It really came from when Chandra uh, and y'all came on, and your husband said, you gotta be that person's peace. So that's where a lot of the
Mm.
wordplay came from. Be that person's peace, and not a piece. So be that peace, bring that peace, but not that portion. That's when you begin to tear down, and begin to be the turmoil in the relationship, because you just brought a portion of it. But be that person's peace.
Yeah.
I just thought about
So,
something, Shonda. One of the seminars that we did earlier in the year in March about a
mm,
piece and not pieces, being in peace and not pieces, that just
yeah.
came back to me. So we have been talking about this for quite some time,
Yeah.
and
So
so go ahead.
on that couples thing that Mr. Russell was talking about, I think my husband said to be her peace,
Peace.
not her trauma.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so, yeah, that we had that conversation in June
Yeah.
about that, and then you and I,
Mhm.
Shirley, had the conversation about that in March or April, and
It
then
was
I think
March.
even yep, and then I think even at the end of last year when we began to talk about submission, we began to talk about those pieces. And
Mhm.
how it was really a whole type of thing that with submission it was more about a willingness, a willing sacrifice of your own personal will for the
Mhm.
desire of someone else or for the betterment of you guys' relationship, and how you had to be wholeheartedly into the relationship and committed to the relationship for that to be the situation, not bring a piece of yourself, I think is what it was that we said, and then it just
Mhm.
kept going from there. But we noticed that though, don't we, Shirley, that these topics that we have, they come up and they don't just start with one conversation, they begin to slowly roll over a set of
Right.
months. And before we know it, we're talking about things that we had really been talking about like all year, kind of led us to this point.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah, that's
awesome.
a good thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
It just lets you
Mhm.
know though too that it's very needed. It's needed in the
Mhm.
land because people are not talking about it in the time where we're shut up in our homes. Not literally, but some people are, because they've chosen to stay put away, and that's okay.
Mhm.
If a person needs to do that, if they don't feel like they're safe, in the time that we're living in right now. But um, there is nothing like having internal peace. Nothing like it.
Mhm.
Um, and as you were saying, Mr. Russell, it does bring out a different part of you when you're able and allowed to be who you were created to be. When you are able to express yourself the way that you haven't been able to do before. When that can spiral out, then you'll know that you don't have to give anybody a piece.
Mhm.
You don't have to um, you don't have to give a part of yourself that you don't have to settle for anything less, should I say. You don't have to settle for what somebody throws at you, just so you can feel like you're needed or wanted. No, we're needed and wanted by God. We are loved by God. And so when we know that we are loved by God, we don't have to settle for anything less than what he desires for us to have. And so to be at a place of internal peace, and to know who you are, that is such a freeing thing. It's such a it's such, I can't even really explain it or really put it into words. But when that begins to happen and you can express yourself the way you want to, you can do little quirky things, and whoever gets it, and the ones who don't, then they weren't supposed to get it, right? So being at a place where you can flourish, to be the apple that you were supposed to be the orange that you were supposed to be, to give off those seeds that need to be giving off. It's such a rewarding. It's such it's a phenomenal thing. It is what the world needs. And so if we could come into a place where we'll know that a piece is not better than nothing. You are not made to be a piece.
Mm-mm.
You were made as a whole. And so in the last, we have another 15 minutes or so, we can just kind of talk about how we can be a whole person, a whole, so we don't have to accept pieces.
It's really knowing who you are.
Okay.
I mean, people hear it all the time. Oh, know your worth, know your worth. If you don't know what worth is, then you're not going to know your worth.
Right.
If you don't know uh, the who you are, then again, you're not going to know your worth, and neither will anyone else. And when you acknowledge what you bring to the table, then that allows you to know that your table is prepared for someone who is supposed to be sitting or seated at that table. So no matter who is at the table, they're going to know and understand that I am at this table for this particular reason, and I am partaking the gifts of this table because I know it's like when they say taste and see that the fruit is good. The food that has been prepared by that person is because it tastes good because it was for you. The drink tastes good because it was made and prepared for you, because not everybody's going to have your same taste, your same taste buds, but the person that is made to cook for you, everything that they make is going to taste good. Every conversation that you have is going to allow you to want to listen because it's making you that much more interchangeable in and through the conversation. But that only is going to happen when you're actually seating or seated with someone that is made for you. And I think sometimes we chase people. Oh, they're made for me. Now you chase them. But if they were made for you, then they're going to be placed
Yes.
Absolutely.
in that moment
Yeah.
for you, and that is where that peace is going to be dwelt. You're going to dwell in that peace because you didn't force yourself there. They didn't force themselves there, but you were there and you met at that moment, at that particular time where that moment was supposed to be created.
That's good.
So
Go ahead, Shonda.
I was just gonna say, let's see. What do we need to do before we get into the relationship so that other people don't get pieces of us? Okay, so something that Mr. Russell said, if you don't understand worth, then you won't understand your worth. So I think that when people usually come and sit with me, as part of being a pastoral counselor, the one thing that I try to understand about them is what is it that they need that makes them tick? What is it that makes them get up in the morning? What is it that they absolutely have to have, or else their life feels devoid or not worth living? And honestly, people have a hard time answering that. And the reason why they have a hard time answering that is because they usually put the wrong thing in that place. They will usually put a man in that place, or their children in that place, or their career in that place. And those things are only sustainable as long as those things are with you. But people die, children leave, careers end. So at the end of the day, if you don't have those things, what is it that is making you drive? What is it that is getting you up? in the morning? What is it that's making your life worth living? And so when I get people to realize that particular need within themselves, then the rest will begin to come easy. Because what that boils down to is a set of life beliefs, a overall worldview. And when you don't have an overall worldview, when you don't have a set of beliefs, when you don't have anything sustaining, then you won't sustain. That's just the bottom line. So knowing what it is, or who it is that you put your trust and your faith in, right? Knowing your own self-worth, and then going through your own set of healing process. Stop jumping into relationships. And what I mean by that is even going from a parental relationship to a type of friendly relationship or intimate relationship. It could even be a roommate type relationship, but just stop jumping from ship to ship, right? Heal in between these ships. Get what it is that you need. If you came out of that last one and you feel like you were hurt in that last one, even if it's your parents, don't jump into another ship. A friendship, a relationship, no ship. Don't jump nowhere until you get whatever it was that hurt you or damaged you to the point where you're no longer feeling that hurt or that damage. Stop living in denial. It's a wonderful place. I understand it's bountiful, but it's not helpful for you in the rest of your life when you stay there by denial, because you don't know what's the truth. You're living in what Mr. Russell has called several times a false reality, right? So you got to get out of there, or else you'll never live your truth. So those things I think would be important to have going on before you continue on romantically.
Good stuff. All right. You have anything, Mr. Russell?
We
You
answered.
was
It's your
next.
turn.
You was
That was
next.
my turn. I was
Yeah,
next.
we answered already.
Hey.
What's this? One, two,
She
three, got it
look,
or something?
look, Ronnie. She's
Correct.
so used to throwing people under the bus. It's her turn.
You wrong for that. Anyway, yeah. So you've kind of pretty much summed it up. It really takes a time to sit back and to discover who you are, before you go forward in any type of relationship, like you said. So sitting by yourself with yourself is important. You gotta know what makes you move, like you said. And so I learned, what makes me smile, what makes me want to sing again, what makes me want to go out and to do the things that I do. You know who I'm living for. I live for God first and foremost, and I live to serve others. And so those are the things that make me happy. So having a sure foundation of grounding of who I am, or who a person is, and just standing firm in that, having that confidence to know that, whatever you were made to do and to be, that's it, that's all. And you don't have to do anything else outside of what you were made to be. Because a lot of times people try to put themselves in other people's shoes, and you can't do it. You can't wear them. They're either too big or too small. They're too narrow. They're too wide. You cannot walk in somebody else's shoes. You can only be who you were created to be. And so when people understand that your purpose in life is your purpose in life, and nobody can do that like you can, then I think it makes for a better world. And when people understand, that they are needed, that they are valued, that they are loved, then they don't have to live in this circle of uncertainty, of unworthiness, and all of those things. It really does boil down to knowing who you are. When you know who you are, you can't be stopped.
That's good.
So, all righty. Y'all silent. Why y'all silent?
Because
Tell me
that
when
was
I ain't
it right
going.
there. That was good. No, that was good. Right. When you know who you are, you can't be stopped. I can't think of a
You
better
can't.
way to end that. I mean, there's such a message in knowing who you are, who it is that you are, what you're called to do, who you're called to be, what that there's nothing. Once you figure that out about yourself, nothing and no one can take that away from you. Not even
You
your
don't have to
own
compete
doubt.
with nobody, right? You don't have to. You don't
Right.
have to do any of that.
No, not even your own doubt can move you out of that space, because that's who you are,
Hmm.
right? That's just
Right.
like it's like breathing to you once you
Hmm.
get there. So no, I don't think there's no better way to end. What were we supposed to top? That was a mic drop moment.
Whatever. Whatever. Well, y'all have been watching Prison Break with Shirley and Sonda, special guest Mr. Ronnie Russell. And the topic was a peace is better than none. Y'all, we've got another bombshell topic on next week. Let me pull this up verbatim so I can read it verbatim. This whole month is going to be hot fire. So y'all want to make sure that you stay tuned in to Prison Break with Shirley and Shonda all month long. We start at 5:35 p.m. We also have an interview that is going to be on Monday night as well. Um, on Monday night as well, Miss Linda Bailey with her book, The Rains Ballet. So super excited about her and her being a new author. So y'all know I'm just filling in time so I can find the title for next week because I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, so it's been a pleasure to talk with y'all on this evening. Next week topic is called Healing the Black Community. Why is an apology necessary? And then our very own Ronnie Russell will be back with us on next week. You are. Why you playing? Yeah, so we're just excited about all the topics and the things that are happening, that are unfolding. We got some more spectacular topics for September. This particular show is actually Shonda and I had talked about yesterday, and another topic spun out of that's going to come in September is talking about women without fathers. It's not your fault. So that plays a lot into accepting pieces and saying a piece is better than none. So I'm just super excited about all that is coming up. And so I'm just reading the comments to see if there's anything else. I don't know if you said this, Shonda. It says you have to learn from that ship. You have to learn from that ship, learn from it, fix it, and slow the what down before you end up wrecking someone else's ship. You so right, Miss Manny. You are so right, because sometimes we come in and we hurt other people, sometimes not knowingly, but we hurt other people when we come bleeding on other folks. So we have to get our own ship right first before we jump to the next one. So yes, and so it's been a pleasure again talking to both of y'all. We'll be back on here next week at 5:35 p.m. Y'all make sure that you keep it locked on 98.5 FM KRGN The Rock. Keep those dials locked. The next voices that you're going to hear are Marriage Mondays with the Kings. Keep it locked.